Welcome to the Doo Doo Divas Smells Like Money podcast. I'm your host, Suzan Chin-Taylor, CEO and founder of Creative Raven, the firm that helps wastewater industry contractors and manufacturers unlock the power of digital marketing, AI, and PR to boost sales and opportunities. Whether it's through our online marketing and lead generation programs or providing a fully outsourced marketing department, we are passionate about helping businesses in the wastewater and civil infrastructure sectors not just survive, but thrive in today's digital world. Each episode, I'll be bringing you expert tips and strategies to help you grow and succeed. Let's dive in. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Doo Doo Divas Smells Like Money podcast. We are today continuing our conversation with James Terry, who is the CEO and president of, I have to, because it's a long name, but I love it, Green Team Building Services out of Florida. And in our last episode, we talked about his really interesting and a little bit funny, growth pattern and what he's doing. And he's become a very, very successful contractor in the commercial space. And I think as an entrepreneur, me being one myself, is that very often in our growing our business and scaling our business, we can often lose sight of the balance, that work-life balance. And James has done an incredible job with that while growing an amazing company and really scaling it to where it is from one truck to now a huge fleet covering the entire state. And so I really wanted to bring him on because when we had a conversation, he just shared, I call them golden nuggets of wisdom. And I wanted to have him come on the show to share, part of his journey and things that he has found as a busy entrepreneur that have allowed him to maintain that work-life balance with his family, and also the importance of giving back and paying it forward, in that I've learned through my journey that you can't keep it unless you're willing to give it away. And so welcome back to the show, James.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So golden pearls of wisdom, work-life balance. God, it's such a big subject. I'm just going to open the floor to you, and you just take this wherever you want to as to what has really allowed you to find this.
Yeah, I think work-life balance is a great term, but it's not actually realistic. And I think there's seasons to work-life balance, right? There's going to be moments in every business where it's going to be all hands on deck,
Right.
everything, the business is going to have to come first. But I think in the beginning, you are going to have to put extra effort in. But if you look at and if you think about this from a perspective of a lot of entrepreneurs are in the business together, husband and wife, right? And that's the
Yes.
same with mine. I'm operations, my wife is finance, and together we build the company. And a lot of conversations are wrapped around investments and where do we go and what's next. But the biggest thing is if you as an owner find work-life balance and you value it, then it's also going to transfer to your culture. And if you think about this for a second, somebody with three young kids, 13, 11, and 7, it's also important to understand that most of your employees, if they're middle-aged people, they're going to be in the same boat. They're going to want that leverage. They're going to want the ability to go to a kindergarten graduation or take their kid to the doctor or go to summer camp that day, whatever it might be. And I think it's also, being able to have work-life balance gives you the ability to be transparent and have the ability to have respect for everybody else's needs, right?
Hmm.
I think one of the biggest things for us has been transparency, but also redundancy. And redundancy in that you got to have somebody at home helping, right? You're not going to be able to do everything yourself, meaning you need to have somebody who might be able to come in and babysit on Friday night so you could go to date night. Because date nights, as most entrepreneurs know, they're out the window. Date nights, like let's look at, receivables or payables. You
Yeah.
have to find ways to strategically build this personal life where you can escape from the business sometimes.
Mm.
And a lot of that has come from finding a full-time babysitter, somebody that can come to the house maybe 3 nights a week, help the kids with homework while you're doing your 5 p.m. meetings. I mean, a lot of networking happens after hours. Sometimes there's networking events on Thursday night. You might have practice for softball, but you have this event. So, for me, I try to balance it to where if I'm gonna sacrifice time with my family, I'm gonna ask myself a very important question. Is this going to help me in the future so much that I'm willing to sacrifice time with my family? And if the answer is yes, then that's a decision that you have to make. But for the most part, I think when you ask yourself that question, you're going to go, no, it's not. Because the one thing I always think about is regret, right? What am I going to regret? Am I going to regret my business not being an extra $1 million in revenue? Or am I going to regret not being there for my kid, right? Whether your business does 8 million or 10 million or 15, that stuff is not relevant or as relevant as were you there to tuck your kid in at night or read him the book or help with homework or go to softball practice. All that stuff is super important. And the reality is that forget about the business for a second. You need to turn your house into a place of peace. And the only way that's ever going to happen is if you find that balance. Otherwise, it's just chaos all the time. And you cannot have a healthy relationship with your wife and your kids if you're constantly bringing the chaos from work back into the household. So we have some very important things that we do, which is we draw a line and we say, all right, if it's not operations related, I'm not going to talk about it. And if it's not finance related, my wife isn't going to talk about it. So that's where it's like we draw the line of what we're going to do. And we also say at a certain time every night, we're not going to talk about work anymore. That's it. After 5, we're not going to talk about it because it ends up being pillow talk, and then all of a sudden your whole life is work.
Oh, that's and yeah, it is. It is so easy that, we all always say, entrepreneurs, you need to have, you know, your heart in the business and the business in your heart. But I have a plaque that I see every morning, and it said, never be so busy making a living that you forget to make a life.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it is hard. And, my late husband always used to say, Susie, is anybody going to die if that doesn't get done today? And
Yeah,
you have to remember that sometimes, that the work will be waiting for me tomorrow. And then at the same time, we also have to give ourselves time, like you were saying, times for our family, but then there's time for ourself, I think is equally important as entrepreneurs. We put ourselves last. We neglect ourselves. And that's where you can get into that realm of professional burnout. And I've gotten very close myself to that on a few occasions, where then I have to like pull back the reins and say, all right, what does Suzanne need? What does James need to be the best version of ourselves? And we have to get in tune with that. Not that you're doing it all the time, but there's that's another thing too, is to never forget about yourself. Don't neglect yourself. Because if
100%.
you're not good to you, you're not going to be any good to anybody else.
Absolutely. I turned 40 a year ago and I looked at myself and said, it's time to start paying attention to my body. And I got 2 meniscus repairs done. I started working out again. I started training. I started getting serious about my diet and my health and my nutrition and everything. So it is very important. I'm glad you brought that up because if you're not happy with the person you see in the mirror, it's going to be very difficult for you to be level-headed enough to run an organization with 50 plus people in it. And believe it or not, everybody thinks whiskey fixes it or, whatever. But the reality is that on a daily basis, you should be finding at least an hour in the morning or in the afternoon to either train or diet or meal prep or whatever else it might be. But how you treat your body and the things you do is super important.
For me, it's morning meditation. And I find if I'm not able to get that time for myself to do that 30 to 45 minutes of that morning meditation, and I jump right into my day, by about 10:30 in the morning, the whole day has started to go to, I call it heck in a handbasket. And I say, okay, wait, I know what this is. And I actually have to stop myself and basically reboot and go back and restart the day. And then everything is back in balance. And, one of the things that you have shared with me, and this is important for me too, is that I think another thing that feeds the soul is that willingness to either pay it forward and give back. And something you said in our last episode is that you love collaborating with other people in the industry, that you don't see them as competitors. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit about, your stance on the importance of paying it forward and giving it back. And, you had a early, even though you said you learned the hard way by mistakes, you had early mentors with your grandfather and your father. And it almost sounds like you're now doing that for the younger generation. So I'd love for you to share about that.
Absolutely. One of the things I did early was I created a Facebook group called Plumbing Masterminds, and basically just would open up the forum to anybody that had any questions about what to do or how to do it. We didn't want to talk about shower valves or technical stuff with plumbing. It was more so the business side, and that
Mm,
really blossomed well. And we have almost 1,000 people on that. But more so, it's when you think about collaboration. Now we have the vac truck and the pump truck and some of these other tools and lining. Like, who's the best person to sell more lining to? It's another plumbing contractor, right? If he's not
right.
doing it, or let's say he needs a grease trap pumped out so he can do a job, or he gets a customer that says, "Hey, can you clean my storm drains?" Well, even though he may be quote unquote a competitor, you guys are feeding off of each other, right? So you're helping him by providing a service to his customer. He's making a little bit of markup on there, and his customer's happy. And so, even in the construction business, I'm friends with people that build high rises. A lot of times there's warranty issues that come up, right? A year later, 6 months later with a construction installation. Hey, can you come out and dig this up for us with your vac truck because we don't want to break any utilities? We need to fix this interceptor that's installed wrong, or find a clean out that we buried somewhere. A lot of it is just explaining to people that you're willing to help in any capacity and just being there as a resource. Sometimes it's just as much as that, but you have to build the relationships. You have to be willing to have the conversations. And to be honest with you, I have a call in an hour with a contractor in another state who's using the same software as I am. And it's an hour exploratory meeting. They want to find out how we're doing inventory. We want to find out some information about how they're using it. There's a lot of value in talking to companies that are bigger than you, that have more employees, because their problems are going to be your problems one day. And if you can learn from the scars early, you're not going to have to develop them yourselves. So I believe in coordinate, like a lot of the connections that I make on LinkedIn are with other plumbing contractors. They're with other excavation contractors, other vac truck contractors. Like you said earlier, sometimes you collaborate with other companies and you do something together as a joint venture. A lot of times people they don't have the right equipment to do something. So there's benefits beyond revenue, and it's more so just even on a bad day when you're just feeling like you're lonely and you're the only person with all the problems, sometimes you just call a contractor that's the same size and they're having the same exact issues. They're having the same problems. It's like calling a therapist. You're like, oh, I
Yes.
guess you're right. I'm not the only person with these crazy problems. You feel better about your situation. You're not as hard on yourself. You don't have that panic attack because you're worried about something when someone else says, this is normal. Someone said something to me a while ago, like if you're not almost going broke every 4 years, you're not really building a company. You're just in cruise control. You're coasting.
Whoa.
You have to take risks in order to grow. And I just, as long, I want everybody to understand that you're not going to grow exponentially 20%, 30%, 40% annually unless you take risks. You're going to have to take risks, whether it's investments in marketing, investments in equipment, investments in tools or trucks or whatever it might be. A lot of people try to keep their overhead down, which I understand. It's understandable, but the real growth comes from taking risk and taking chances. Sometimes you're going to lose,
Mm.
but like us, right? We won by trying to get into the vac truck business. Then on top of that, got into the CCTV business, and now both of those things collectively, that's our highest ticket. That's our highest margin division out of the entire company now. So you got to take risks if you want to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even myself a couple of years back, um, everybody, my business coach and different people I was working with were saying, you need to offload these things. You need to hire a VA. And it was like letting go of that, the reins, the control. Oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do it. And I'll tell you, I did it. And I have a wonderful VA. And at the beginning, he just took over my email, just like sorting through the things like what do I really need to look at? What was junk? What can wait till later? The man gave me back 2.5 hours of my life every day. So instead of still being at the laptop at 8 o'clock at night with my husband going, are you going to come and sit with me now? Like just something, are you going to come and eat dinner now? He gave me my life back. And it was like taking that risk, taking that chance. It was probably one of the best investments that I've ever made in my business and really even in for myself. When we were talking about that work-life balance to what are you willing to let go of to get back time in your life? I would challenge everybody to look at that. And it's
Yeah.
not that scary. Right now we're looking at AI tools. I mean, I'm doing a presentation at the Wet Show coming in February, all about integrated and, things that you can do with AI that we may have not even think about. And even things that AI is affecting in our businesses that have nothing to do with our use of AI tools, but they're affecting our business and our performance passively that we need to be aware of. And so it's embracing these things and being unafraid. You were saying taking that risk and being unafraid to let go. And hey, let's see what happens. It might work,
Yeah.
it might not. But if it works, wow, you sit back and go, gosh, I wish I had done that sooner. Sure, you
Yeah,
would too.
there's a great book called How to Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. It's a fantastic book with everything like you just said, because it's also not just about getting your time back, it's about getting control. Some of the decisions
Yes.
that I made were to make investments so that I had control. And when you have control of your product, meaning you're not depending on a subcontractor, you're not depending on a piece of rental equipment. I will tell you that rental equipment is sometimes the biggest disaster because you rent it, it shows up, it doesn't work, the battery's dead, the drill bit's bad. There's so many issues with rentals that we decided to invest in things like our own scissor lifts, right? Our own concrete mixer, our own this, our own that, because you can't always depend on things. And when you want control, you have to make investments. That was one of the big things that we decided very early on is we wanted control of our product and we wanted less variables. The less amount of variables that you have in your business, the more chances you're going to deliver a very consistent product that people enjoy. And that's where the word of mouth comes from. If you're somebody who doesn't do a lot of marketing, your execution has to be dialed in because you're not going to have that same experience every time and you're not going to get those great referrals that you're used to.
Well, James, I want to leave it there because honestly, I think you and I could be on this call for the next 3 hours just talking about business and you have so much wisdom to share. And so audience, I would invite you to connect with James. Tell us about that Facebook group. What is that address that they could look for? Your LinkedIn address. And I know, your website is it's gogreenteam.com, correct?
It's
Oh,
getgreenteam.com.
getgreenteam.com. I
Yep.
apologize. And
Yeah.
so how can they, get in touch with you to share this dialogue? And like we were saying, let's all share wisdom.
Absolutely. LinkedIn is the best place to reach me. That's where I'm spending a lot of my time. Facebook is definitely something that I'm on, but not as much. But the Facebook group is called Plumbing Masterminds. It's very simple. You just look up Plumbing Masterminds as a group and you can find it. You can connect, you can add yourself and there's a lot of content in there. But LinkedIn is definitely the place for me because that's where my clients are, that's where other professionals are. And, just my advice, if you're not on LinkedIn as a contractor, you need to be, especially if you're in the municipal commercial space, because that's where all the buyers are, that's where the procurement agents are, that's where all the executives are, and that's where you're going to get in front of a lot of important people. And believe it or not, I've DM'd some very important people on LinkedIn and they answer back. So it's a direct contact to some very important customers and potentially your next big contract. And obviously the website's www.getgreenteam.com. Would love to connect with anybody and always here to help. Love seeing people talking about their business and their team. We need to show more pride in what we do, and that's a great place to do it.
Oh, James, and thank you for that pitch for LinkedIn and the use of LinkedIn. You're preaching to the choir here. It's something that I've been telling folks is that this isn't going away and this is where you need to be. Maybe not if you're in a residential market, maybe not so much, but if you are seriously playing in the commercial, municipal, and industrial area, you have to be on LinkedIn because that's where your audience is. It's where they're hanging out. And so again, James, thank you for your time. I know you're a busy guy. I so appreciate you spending time with me today. Audience, I hope you got something out of this. And I look forward to following you on LinkedIn more and seeing what you're up to and hopefully bumping into each other at a trade show. So thanks again for being here. And thank you, audience, for tuning in. And until next time, keep it flowing. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If you're ready to take your marketing to the next level and start increasing sales and opportunities for your business, reach out to us at Creative Raven. We're here to help you thrive in the digital landscape. Visit creativeraven.com or click the link in the show notes below to schedule a call and learn how we can support your growth. If you enjoyed the insights on today's episode, be sure to hit subscribe so you'll never miss an update. Until next time, keep growing and keep it flowing.